Close your eyes for a moment and take a deep breath. Feel the air entering your body, filling you with life. In this moment, nothing is missing. Everything you need is here. Yet the mind insists on worry, on imagining scenarios that do not exist, on carrying burdens that were never yours to bear. Worry is a story the mind tells itself, a projection into a future that is not real. It is a cloud passing through the vast sky of your being. You are not the cloud, you are the sky. The stillness beneath all movement, the presence that remains untouched, no matter how strong the storm appears to be. There is something greater than the mind, something deeper than thought. It has carried you through every moment of your life, even the ones you thought you would not survive, and it is carrying you now. The more you resist, the heavier the burden feels. But when you surrender, when you trust, the weight disappears. You realize it was never yours to carry. The same power that causes the sun to rise and the rivers to flow is guiding your life. It knows what you do not. It sees beyond what you can see. The mind will tell you that you must figure everything out, that you must control every outcome. The birds do not question if there will be food tomorrow. They exist in harmony with the greater flow of life. Worry exists only in the mind. It is a mental habit, a pattern of thought that projects fear into an uncertain future. The mind is always searching for something to hold on to, something to prepare for, something to fix. It creates scenarios, plays out possibilities, and convinces you that if you don't think about every potential problem, you won't be ready for what may come. But none of these imagined outcomes exist. They are thoughts, nothing more. When you observe worry closely, you will notice that it is never rooted in the present moment. It is always about what could happen, what might go wrong, what needs to be controlled. The mind tries to convince you that by worrying, you are somehow preventing suffering, but the suffering is already happening in your mind. The thing you are afraid of has not occurred, yet the body reacts as if it has. Your heartbeat quickens, your muscles tighten, and a sense of unease takes over. All because of a thought. Thoughts have no power on their own. They arise and disappear like waves in the ocean, constantly shifting, never still. The only reason worry feels real is because you believe in it. You attach yourself to the thought, engage with it, and allow it to grow. Without your attention, worry would dissolve just like a cloud drifting across the sky. The mind thrives on attention. The more you focus on a worry, the stronger it becomes. But when you step back and simply notice the thought, without identifying with it, its grip loosens. Imagine sitting by a river, watching leaves float by. Each leaf is a thought. Some pass quickly, some linger for a moment before moving on. Worry is just another leaf. If you try to grab it, hold on to it, analyze it, you become entangled in the current. But if you allow it to drift by, it loses its hold over you. This is the nature of all thoughts, even the ones that seem overwhelming. The mind is not your enemy, but it is also not who you are. It is a tool, meant to be used when needed and set aside when not. But most people live as if they are their thoughts, as if every idea that arises must be believed, analyzed, and followed. This is where suffering begins. The more you identify with the mind stories, the more you become trapped in a cycle of worry, fear, and anxiety. If you take a moment to look around, to truly see what is here right now, you will realize that nothing is wrong. The problem exists only in thought. Your body is breathing, the world is moving, life is unfolding. Worry distracts you from this reality, keeping you stuck in an illusion. The more you recognize this, the easier it becomes to let go. Not by force, not by trying to stop the thoughts, but by seeing them for what they are, fleeting, temporary, without real substance. You are not your thoughts. They arise in the mind, seemingly out of nowhere, and disappear just as quickly. Yet most people go through life believing every thought that enters their awareness, identifying with them as if they define who they are. But thoughts are not who you are. They are like passing clouds in the sky, temporary and ever-changing. If you sit quietly and observe, you will notice how thoughts come and go without any effort on your part. They appear, linger for a moment, and then fade, only to be replaced by another. There is something within you that is aware of these thoughts, something that remains unchanged despite the endless stream of mental activity. The mind has been conditioned to believe that every thought must be engaged with, analyzed, and acted upon. It creates stories about the past, worries about the future, and constantly seeks solutions to problems that may not even exist. This is its nature. But just because a thought appears does not mean it is true, important, or worthy of your attention. When you believe every thought, you become trapped in a cycle of unnecessary mental thoughts of fear create anxiety, thoughts of regret create sadness, and thoughts of judgment create separation. Yet none of these thoughts define you. There is an awareness within you that watches all of this happen. This awareness is always present, always still, always untouched by whatever the mind is doing. Imagine sitting in a quiet room, watching a television screen. The images on the screen change constantly, scenes of joy, sadness, conflict, and peace, but no matter what appears on the screen, you remain seated, simply observing. Your thoughts are like those images, constantly shifting, but you are not the screen, you are the one watching. The moment you realize this, a space opens up between you and the thoughts. They lose their power. Instead of being swept away by every passing idea, you can step back and simply observe. When a fearful thought arises, instead of reacting with more fear, you can notice it. When a thought of self-doubt appears, instead of believing it, you can let it pass. You begin to see that these thoughts do not belong to you. They are patterns shaped by past experiences, by conditioning, by the mind's habit of seeking problems to solve. They are not a reflection of reality. If you close your eyes and simply listen, you may hear distant sounds, birds, traffic, the wind. These sounds come and go without your control. Thoughts function in the same way. They are not you, they are simply passing through. The more you practice observing thoughts, instead of engaging with them, the more freedom you experience. You no longer feel the need to react to everything the mind produces. Instead, you rest in the awareness that watches, the presence that remains still no matter how chaotic the mind becomes. The thoughts may continue. You begin to experience a deep sense of peace, not because the mind has stopped, but because you have stopped identifying with it. Surrendering to the present means allowing life to be as it is, without resistance. The mind constantly seeks to control, to change, to reshape reality into something it deems acceptable. It clings to ideas of how things should be, how the future must unfold, and how the past could have been different. This resistance creates tension, stress, and suffering. But reality does not bend to the mind's desires. Life moves according to a rhythm far greater than personal will, unfolding moment by moment in perfect order. When this is recognized, there is no longer a need to fight against what is. The present moment is the only place where life truly happens. The past exists only as memory, a collection of thoughts that arise and fade. The future is entirely unknown, a projection of the mind that may or may not unfold as imagined. Yet most people spend their lives caught between these two illusions, rarely touching the depth of now. The mind is always seeking, always waiting for the next moment, believing that peace, happiness, or fulfillment exist somewhere ahead. But nothing real is missing from this moment. Everything needed is already here. The more deeply this is realized, the more natural it becomes to surrender. Surrender is not about giving up or becoming passive. It is the deepest form of trust, an acknowledgement that life is unfolding exactly as it should, even when the mind does not understand. When challenges arise, the mind immediately seeks solutions, trying to escape discomfort as quickly as possible, but often the struggle comes not from the situation itself, but from the mind's resistance to it. The idea that things should be different, that they must change for peace to exist, is what creates suffering. When this resistance is released, when there is a willingness to meet the present moment as it is, a sense of ease replaces the struggle. Everything in nature follows the flow of life effortlessly. The river does not resist its path. It moves naturally, adjusting to every curve and obstacle. The trees do not struggle against the changing seasons. They simply allow, growing in harmony with the conditions around them. There is no tension, no fight, no need to control. Human beings, however, live as if they are separate from this flow, constantly pushing, striving, and resisting. This illusion of separation is what creates suffering. But when there is surrender, there is alignment with the natural movement of life. In this state, even challenges are met with acceptance. It does not mean that pain disappears or that difficulties will never arise. It simply means that suffering, which is the mind's resistance to what is no longer present. There is a deep knowing that whatever arises is part of a greater unfolding, and that presence itself is always enough. When this is understood, life is no longer a battle to be won or a problem to be solved. It is an experience to be lived fully, without resistance, without fear, and without the need to control. There is a presence beyond what the mind can see, beyond what the senses can grasp. It moves through all things, sustaining life effortlessly. The same power that causes the sun to rise, the rivers to flow, and the trees to grow is also guiding your life. It has been with you from the beginning, orchestrating events in ways you cannot always understand. The mind, however, struggles with uncertainty. It wants to predict, to control, to be certain of what will happen next. But life does not work that way. The unseen force that holds everything together does not operate through fear or control. It operates through trust and flow. When a child takes their first steps, they do not analyze how to walk. They simply move, trusting that something beyond thought will guide them. When birds migrate across vast distances, they do not carry maps or question their direction. They simply follow an invisible knowing within them. Everything in nature exists in perfect harmony with this unseen force. It does not resist, question, or try to control. It simply allows itself to be carried. Human beings, however, have been conditioned to doubt, to believe that they must rely only on their thoughts, plans, and strategies. The mind creates fear by imagining everything that could go wrong. But fear is only the absence of trust. Trusting the unseen does not mean that challenges will not come. It does not mean that life will always unfold according to personal desires. It means recognizing that there is a greater intelligence at work, one that knows what is needed at every moment. The mind judges situations as good or bad based on limited understanding, but what seems difficult now may later reveal itself as necessary. Many times, people look back on past struggles and realize that those experiences shaped them, taught them, or led them to something greater. At the time, the mind resisted, but something deeper was always guiding the way. Every breath taken is sustained by something beyond personal effort. No one has to think about keeping their heart beating or making sure their lungs function. It happens on its own. In the same way, life is moving in alignment with something far greater than individual control. The mind may not always understand, but understanding is not required for trust. Just as the sky does not doubt whether the sun will rise, there is no need to doubt the path being laid before you. When there is trust in the unseen, there is freedom from unnecessary fear. There is no longer a need to hold on to worry, to control every outcome, or to live in a state of constant resistance. Instead, there is a deep knowing that everything is unfolding as it should. The river does not need to know where it is going. It simply flows. The wind does not need to question its direction. It simply moves. There is a presence that carries all things, and when this is recognized, life becomes lighter, more peaceful, and filled with an unshakable sense of security. The need for control is deeply ingrained in the human mind. It seeks to shape the future, to avoid discomfort, to ensure that everything unfolds according to its expectations. This creates a constant state of tension, an underlying fear that things might not go as planned. The mind believes that by holding on tightly, by analyzing every possibility, it can prevent failure, loss, or suffering. But control is an illusion. Life does not obey the mind's demands, and the more one tries to force outcomes, the more resistance is created. Life is always moving, always changing, and it cannot be contained within rigid expectations. The river does not resist the bends in its path. It flows effortlessly, adjusting to each turn. The seasons change without struggle, following a rhythm far beyond human control. Everything in nature moves in harmony with the flow of life, yet human beings live as though they are separate from this flow, believing they must control every detail. But trying to control life is like trying to grasp water in one's hands. The tighter the grip, the faster it slips away. When control is released, a new kind of peace emerges. The weight of constantly trying to manage every aspect of life begins to fade. There is an openness, a trust that allows things to unfold naturally. This does not mean passivity or inaction. It means acting from a place of wisdom rather than fear. When the mind is consumed by the need to control, decisions are made out of anxiety, out of a desperate attempt to secure a specific outcome. But when there is surrender, actions become aligned with the present moment. They are not forced. They arise naturally, without struggle. Letting go of control does not mean that difficulties will never arise. Life will always bring challenges, unexpected changes, and moments of uncertainty. But when there is no resistance, these experiences do not create unnecessary suffering. They are met with acceptance, with a deep knowing that whatever is happening is part of a greater unfolding. The mind may not always understand why things happen as they do, but understanding is not necessary for trust. Just as the tree does not resist the storm, but bends with the wind, there is a way to move through life with the same sense of ease. There is a misconception that control equals security. But true security does not come from controlling life. It comes from trusting it. The more one tries to manipulate circumstances, the more fear is created. But when the need for control is released, fear fades and a sense of lightness takes its place. There is no longer the exhausting effort of holding everything together, no longer the burden of worrying about what might go wrong. Instead, there is a quiet confidence, a deep trust that life is carrying everything exactly as it should. This is where real peace is found, not in controlling the waves, but in learning to ride them, allowing them to take you exactly where you need to be. There is nothing to fear, because you are already being carried. Life has always supported you, even in moments when you thought you were alone. Every breath you take is given to you freely, without effort. Your heart beats without your control. Your body heals wounds, digests food, and allows you to see, hear, and move, all without your instruction. There is an intelligence far greater than the mind, sustaining everything in perfect order. Yet the mind creates fear by believing it is separate, that it must figure everything out, solve every problem, and ensure its own survival. This illusion of separation is what causes suffering. From the moment of birth, life is taking care of you. As a child, you did not worry about how to grow, how to learn language, how to take your first steps. It all happened naturally, without force. There was no struggle, no anxious planning, only the effortless unfolding of what was meant to be. But as the mind developed, it began to believe that it alone was responsible for making things happen. It forgot the deep trust that once existed, the natural state of being that knew everything was already taken care of. The worries of the world replaced this trust, and fear took root. Fear arises when the mind projects itself into an uncertain future. It imagines every possible outcome, every potential problem and convinces itself that it must prepare for everything. But this is an illusion. The future does not exist anywhere except in thought. The only thing that is real is this moment, and in this moment there is no danger. The mind may argue otherwise, but if you stop and truly look, you will see that you are safe, that life is holding you exactly where you need to be. There is a presence within you that has never been harmed, never been afraid, never been separate from the whole. This presence has carried you through every difficulty, even the ones you thought you would not survive. It has guided you through uncertainty, through loss, through moments of doubt. Even when things did not go as planned, you continued to move forward, to grow, to learn. Something greater than the mind was always at work, leading you in ways you could not yet understand. The ocean does not struggle to carry the waves, just as the sky does not struggle to hold the clouds. Everything is effortlessly supported by something beyond itself. In the same way, you are already being carried. You do not have to hold on so tightly. You do not have to figure everything out. The moment you release the need to control, the moment you stop fighting against the flow of life, you will feel the deep relief of knowing you were never alone. The same force that keeps the stars in place, that brings the sun up each morning, is the same force that holds you now. The more you trust, the lighter you become, and the more you will see that you have always been exactly where you need to be. There is nothing to fear, nothing to control, nothing to resist. The mind may try to hold on, to predict, to worry, but life is already unfolding in perfect order. You are not your thoughts, not your fears, not the stories the mind creates. There is a presence within you that is deeper than the noise of the mind, untouched by worry, unshaken by uncertainty. When you surrender to this presence, you realize that you were never alone, never lost, never unsupported. The same power that moves the universe is moving within you, guiding you, carrying you. The more you trust, the more peace you feel. The more you let go, the more you realize you are always held.